Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to address you today in this critical session, Bekal Seeds of Indigenous Wisdom, Waving Our Planetary Health and Wealth. Indigenous land are not just vast expanses of territory, but critical ecosystem holding 80% of our planet's biodiversity and a significant carbon sink as well. Managed through centuries-old practices, these lands exemplify sustainable living and resource management. The World Economic Forum and Trihita Karana Forum recognize the invaluable contribution of indigenous knowledge in addressing global challenges. The meeting that we have today, the discussion that we have today, the wish of the outcome is first integration into finance framework. That is, the discussion underscores the urgency of integrating indigenous knowledge into global finance frameworks to support sustainable development programs for indigenous communities. The second outcome that we wish from the discussion is partnership for empowerment. It is imperative to forge strong partnerships between indigenous movement and global institutions, leading to concrete programs to empower indigenous communities to thrive while safeguarding our planet health. The third outcome is commitment to implementation. The outcome of this discussion, we wish to be able to be translated into actionable steps from government, business, NGO, and civil society to implement policies that respect indigenous rights, support economic development, and preserve cultural heritage. And then the next one is to set the scene for our discussion. Sorry, there is the fourth one that I missed. The fourth one is resource allocation. Its adequate resources must be allocated to support indigenous initiatives, including financial resources, technical assistance, and capacity buildings that programs that tailor to the needs of indigenous communities. Thank you for Pak Nyoman's question earlier that I really love. It calls for the attention of how financing currently can respond to these small local initiatives that may not have the capacity to adhere to a very, very high standard in the global scene. Yeah, so it's really important to have a discussion on this especially. And the last one, the fifth outcome that we wish to have in this discussion is long-term engagement. This discussion should mark the beginning of an ongoing engagement rather than a one-time event. So hopefully you all have a chance to exchange contact number so that the discussion can continue outside this room and for a long while. And continuous dialogue, collaboration, and accountability are essential for ensuring the effective implementation of the discussed strategies. Now, let me next, since Bunani is not here yet, we are going to go straight to each of our experts on subject matters who sits among some of you because we don't have like 9 speakers, thank God, so we have a lot more discussion. So we are going to use, in the spirit of the indigenous setting, indigenous eyes and heart and mind, I would like to ask your permission to speak in Bahasa Indonesia. So for non-Indonesian speaking participant, you have tools to help you understand the conversation. But perhaps for now, since our speaker, perhaps unless you can speak Indonesia, Mr. Speakers, maybe you can lend the instrument to each other, sort of share. This is the spirit of sharing. So perhaps for now, because the speaker will speak in, are you speaking in Bahasa? Oh, Okay, in English. Any of the speakers speaks in Bahasa besides Ruka and... No? Okay, so perhaps for now, because the speaker will talk in English, perhaps you can loan that or share it to your friends at the table who doesn't speak or doesn't understand English well, okay? First, let me just request all the speakers, which I called, to just stand up so everybody knows who and where you are. Okay, the first one I would like to call, and you just can stand by your table, Father Marcin Schmidt. I hope I mentioned it correctly, from the State of Vatican City. He's a priest, the way he introduced it to me, president of the 3HK Institute. I'm so curious with this because is this Sri Hitakarana? Okay, that what came in our mind when we discussed, like, this is an interesting name. Okay, the second speaker would be Pak Peter Seligman. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Thank you. Founder of Conservation International, who's very much close to the heart of a lot of indigenous communities, I believe. Okay, and the third one is Pak James McCall. There you go, Pak James. He is the Civil Society and Leadership Advisor in Indonesia for Packard, the Packard Foundation. Okay, Mbak Ruka, who missed the flight this morning because the flight got delayed, so she will be here later on after the discussion. Instead, will be joining us via Zoom, hopefully. And Mbak Ruka is Secretary General of Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara, or Indigenous People Alliance of Archipelago, or AMAN. Kemudian the next one is Pak Steve Wawiyai. Where are you, Pak? Oh, there you go. He is a proud Bekal Fellow, founder of Raja Ampat Coastal Community Association. Okay, welcome all distinguished speakers. Now, the next one, what I would like to invite you is to speak from your table. You don't have to go to the front. But in case Ibu Nani arrive, then after you finish the sharing your thought and initiatives, we will allow time for give the address, basically, and then we go back to the discussion. Is that okay? Yeah? So that we don't have to wait and lose time for a precious discussion that we are going to have. Okay, now I'm going to invite question. Pak Peter, the question is, can you use so that I can speak in Bahasa? For now, then after that you can. Oke, Pak Peter, pertanyaan yang kami sampaikan untuk bisa dibahas dalam diskusi siang ini adalah bagaimana organisasi-organisasi dapat beralih dari hanya berbicara atas nama masyarakat adat menjadi bekerja sama dengan mereka secara langsung untuk melindungi hak-hak mereka atas tanah dan wilayah adat serta hubungan timbal balik antar manusia dan semua makhluk di bumi.
My name is Peter Seligman. I started an organization in 1987 called Conservation International, which has worked throughout Indonesia. And 7 years ago, stepped down at Conservation International I still chair the board, but to start a new organization called Nia Tero, which means Our Earth. And Nia Tero was created to be a bridging organization between indigenous peoples and non-indigenous peoples, and to occupy that difficult space of bridging and trying to create trust. And when we created the organization, the concept was to build a board of directors that would be led by indigenous peoples. So there are 12 board members. 7 of them are indigenous. The chair and the vice chair are indigenous. And the same thing with the leadership team and the same thing with staff of the organization, principally indigenous peoples. And the purpose was to work in solidarity to support the efforts of indigenous peoples who have in their commitments to protect their cultures, their language, and their territories from assault and invasion. And the concept emerged as I left Conservation International when I was shown by scientists that the majority of the forests on the planet Earth are on indigenous peoples' territories, that so much of the carbon is on indigenous territories, that so much of the biological diversity is on indigenous territories, and so much of the aggravation and the assault on peoples was against indigenous peoples. And so the question I asked friends who were indigenous leaders was, does an organization exist that is solely committed to supporting indigenous peoples at a global level in their fight and their struggle that is led by indigenous peoples? And the answer was there was no organization globally, so we decided to create this organization. And what we have, of course, learned is a great deal. What we have really learned is that our role as a bridging organization is to be a strong ally. It is not to speak for indigenous peoples. It is to be in solidarity, to support, to assist. And we've begun to think about what are the most effective ways to do that. And so what I'd like to do is just touch upon what are some of the roles that allies can play, and who are those allies. We already know that for the last 29 years, there's been a climate crisis that has not improved, but it's gotten worse. And it's gotten worse because the developed world looks at nature through a lens that is commodity. And so the first lesson that we are trying to share is that all of the indigenous peoples whom we work with look at the earth through a different lens. It's a lens of relationship, a lens of reciprocity, a lens of the tree is my sibling. It's not something to be bought and sold. Same with animals, same with the earth, same with the rivers and mountains. And so that was kind of the first lesson. And what we've tried to do with all of the partners that we have embraced that are not indigenous is to get them to understand that first and foremost. The second thing that we have really thought a great deal about is how do we support the transformation of conservation organizations, financing organizations, corporations, governments, et cetera, so that they actually have a clear understanding of a different lens from what they have evolved as. And so part of that, from our perspective, is ensuring that indigenous peoples are present on the boards of directors and the leadership teams of all major conservation groups, that indigenous peoples are present in all bodies that make choices and decisions about indigenous lands and peoples. And that's really been a key part of our advocacy, both with the Convention on Biodiversity, this concept of 30 by 30, with the UN climate negotiations. And so part of our work has been, how do you find, train, assist indigenous peoples to be present at a policy level in all of these discussions and all of these negotiations? And so what we've also insisted upon is that we as a bridging organization are not the spokespeople, but we are really an organization that, you want me to stop?
1 minute.
Okay. The other piece that we've really seen that we think is absolutely essential and extremely challenging is how do you actually develop direct access for financing to indigenous peoples? It's really difficult, but I think that the urgency in the call is not on the indigenous peoples to solve that problem. The urgency of that call is on all of the organizations that are trying to achieve change, whether it's in the UN, whether it's nation states, whether it's organizations, that they actually need to figure out how do they make themselves accessible. What's the change that they need to embrace so that we're not requiring indigenous peoples to change, we're actually requiring the institutions that provide the financing to change. And so I think that overall, that's an essential role. And the final piece, which I think is really important just to touch upon in these opening comments, is that we need to have an increase in the global awareness. That requires really effective storytelling. So who are the storytellers? Who are the indigenous leaders? Who are the indigenous communicators that need to be elevated so that their stories can be heard, and heard by the platforms that can reach the public? Because we have to elevate an understanding and awareness that the traditional approach to addressing environment has not worked. That looking just at economics of biological diversity and ecosystem services is essential, it is not enough. What's required is going to be a shift in our values. And the peoples that have demonstrated the right values, the values that actually say we have to actually understand, listen, learn, and engage with nature in a different way, are indigenous peoples. So that really is an essential part of what has to happen. And I think that until we change our value system, we are not going to actually solve either the environmental shifts or the climate shifts that are absolutely required. And it's the role of all organizations to listen carefully to the wisdom of indigenous peoples so that we can actually make those transformations that have been demonstrated to actually protect so much of this earth already. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Terima kasih Pak Peter. Pesannya sangat kuat sekali sebetulnya ya, dengan organisasi yang dibuat untuk levelnya level dunia, tetapi mayoritas boardnya adalah indigenous people. Ini luar biasa menurut saya, dan perlu sebetulnya pada saat kita mengerjakan suatu misi begitu ya, maka board kita memang harus berasal dari mereka-mereka yang bergelut atau orang-orang yang memang merepresentasikan misi tersebut begitu. Dan juga your call, permintaan bahwa justru organisasi-organisasi besar seperti UN, the aid agencies gitu ya, mereka yang harusnya berubah untuk supaya mereka bisa diakses oleh komunitas-komunitas masyarakat adat, bukan sebaliknya. Kenapa? Karena akan jauh lebih susah sebetulnya bagi masyarakat adat untuk memenuhi standar yang mereka miliki daripada sebaliknya. Resource yang ada, ketersediaan dana, daya, itu semuanya sebetulnya dimiliki oleh aid agency, bantuan-bantuan asing maupun organisasi-organisasi besar ya. Sehingga yang diperlukan mungkin political will ya Pak Peter. The need political will to answer your call just now. It's really striking. Oke, karena Ibu Nani sudah tiba, saya ingin mengundang Ibu Nani. Ibu Nani, I think will be speaking in English. Betul Bu? This how diverse we are Bu ya. Okay, Bu Nani is from the coordinating Minister for Environment and Forestry Management, and she will deliver the opening remarks. And the floor is yours, Ibu Nani. Silahkan Ibu di depan. Terima kasih.
Yeah, thank you, Ibu Siva Supomo. Distinguished, I think first I would like to apologize for being late to arrive here. So I was checking the field for the preparation of the, just like called rehearsal for the groundbreaking of the International Mangrove Research Center just close here. So if in the field, it's sometimes I forgot the time. So I can enjoy the atmosphere. Yes, so very good afternoon to all here and distinguished Mr. Peter Salman, founder of the CI, and also to Father Masin here from Vatican, Order of the Malta, and also Mr. Ruka Sombolinggi, the Secretary General Indigenous People Alliance of the Archipelago. Oh, by Zoom. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Hope you can hear me. And of course, all the representative of the indigenous communities, business, and government. So first of all, I think this is a very good opportunity for me to be here in the surrounding all the smart people, and then pay the attention in for the important, I think important topic, because I heard the what to call it, the speech, yeah, that from you, and then I said that actually as we because we are in living in the nature actually, so we see the long histories, yeah, of Indonesia, especially for if we want to, I mean, I would like to say first for case of Indonesia, we have more 17,000 islands, and of course we have too many of the local community. But then we fully agreed and understand very well, I think, if we go to the field, that the local community, that means indigenous people, and local wisdom is actually the key to make it the many program of the climate actions, which is related with, for instance, with the forestry and other topic as well, I think other sector as well, that they are close to the community that can be sustainable. I think one example that I would like to share here, the government of Indonesia has a very good program. We call it the social forestry. Social forestry is basically is the program that we would like to pay attention on how to decrease the forest fire, but in the same time, also we would like to decrease the deforestations and also to increase the economic benefit for the people. So then our President, Excellency Joko Widodo, because his background is forestry, so from the Gajah Mada University, so he know very well about the forest, and then how big the community they live in the forest or near the forest. So then we cannot only say you cannot, but then we should ask them to be part of the national priority program. So then the social forestry, if we follow, yeah, they have we call it the integrated approach, integrated area development approach, where basically they use also the local wisdom. Local wisdom is from the indigenous people, basically, and involving the communities in the front. So then I think the program is improved. Yeah, this is just one example. So this is also, we can see that how important is the local, I mean the indigenous people, or we call it also communities, yeah, and together with the local wisdom. And the other also is not only in Indonesia, because we have tropical forest cooperation with Brazil and DRC Congo. So we discuss about this issue. So how we can agree to put it in actually in our joint declaration, but that actually plan to be signed here, but then it cannot be signed in this time, but maybe this year we will find another a good time for this signing of the joint declaration that we expect by the presidents of 3 countries as an initiator. So in this part, we actually have the objective how to make it the forestry, sustainable forestry management. So it's not talking only about bioeconomy and rehabilitation, restoration, but also we include these indigenous people and community. So we use two words actually. So indigenous people, we put it there, but also the communities approach, we also put it there. So then we have like quite strong message on this, how important of them in the tropical forest cooperation in the context of how to make it the sustainable forestry management can work. So yeah, so I think so. Yeah, this is just introduction. So I just maybe this reads a small. I mean, it's a part of this that prepared by our team, and I think we understand that indigenous land and indigenous communities are again not only preserving the global biodiversity but also are believed to reduce the impact of climate change, as I mentioned. Yeah. So if we go to the field more, then we will understand more. So because we should go to get a feeling and to understand deep about the situation in the field. And also another thing, so the indigenous land could save also the carbon stock larger to the sustainability. Yeah, so if we talk about the bioeconomy, as I mentioned, is actually beyond carbon credit. So it is also the special approach. So I already mentioned about the Indonesian situation and example, and also I have another example in Bali. So I will take the Subak system here in Bali. So I saw also Subak is one of the option for the destination for the field trip. So then there's a good example here related with the irrigation system. We call it Subak. It's based on the Balinese philosophy of balancing the people, nature, and spiritual. And the system is being used for the cultivation of rice terrace, maintain soil health, and also to ensure the steam water supply. And so beautiful also. If we go there, we don't want, I think we don't want to like hurry to come back here. Just like very interesting that we have a minister from UAE just snorkeling here. And then he said, so enjoy about the area of Ibu Cherry here. And she said, I don't want to come back to UAE. Yeah. Because of the so nice. Yeah, so I think the last point that we realized that we need the Pentahelix, especially international support to preserve the indigenous land and community. So the support could be financing, also building capacity, and also empowerment activity. So we'd like to invite you and also our global partner here to join hands with Indonesia in our shared mission to advance sustainability, to have to achieve the goals through the safeguarding of the indigenous culture and land. Yeah, and I think I believe that this discussion will be very productive, and then also we will see the resource toward generating innovative solution and actionable strategy. So let us unite in purpose, harnessing the diversity of our perspective and strength of our collaboration to create the world where sustainability and inclusivity thrive hand in hand. So thank you so much, and wish for the productive again meeting, and then I believe we will meet again in the same, because we have the same spirit. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Her Excellency Ibu Nani Hendiarti. the Deputy Coordinating Minister for Environment and Forestry Management, Republic of Indonesia, for your time. And yang berikut kita akan mendengar dari Kak Ruka Sombolinggi, Sekretaris Jenderal dari AMAN. Apakah Ruka bisa di sini? Zoom-nya?
Selamat pagi. Suara saya kedengaran enggak?
Kedengaran suaranya. Keras suaranya, kedengaran. Terima kasih.
Oke, saya pakai bahasa Indonesia saja ya.
Ya, memang ini sesinya, sesinya memang pakai bahasa Indonesia, don't worry.
Makasih. Terima kasih banyak khususnya buat teman-teman penyelenggara dan Mbak Sita. Saya minta maaf karena pagi ini pesawat saya terlambat dan sebaiknya berpartisipasi dari jauh saja. Jadi terima kasih banyak sekali lagi atas kesempatan ini. Salam Nusantara, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak hari ini membicarakan tentang peran masyarakat adat di dalam menjaga ekosistem, biodiversity, dan termasuk hutan. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Izinkan memperkenalkan saya Ruka Sombolinggi. Saya orang Toraja. Saat ini saya adalah Sekjen Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara. Di pekerjaan kami di AMAN salah satunya adalah memperjuangkan perlindungan terhadap masyarakat adat. Kenapa ini menjadi sangat penting? Karena kita tahu saat ini kita berada di tengah-tengah situasi yang kita sebut sebagai krisis iklim. Dan kita saat ini masih bisa menikmati apa yang kita punya, itu karena 80%-nya di seluruh dunia itu dijaga oleh masyarakat adat. Studi membuktikan bahwa hutan-hutan yang dijaga oleh masyarakat adat yang terbaik saat ini di seluruh dunia itu ada 36% intact forest yang masih dijaga oleh masyarakat adat. Demikian juga dengan menjaga biodiversity, ekosistem yang lain. Menjaga hutan dan keanekaragaman hayati itu tidak terlepas dari menjaga keberagaman praktek-praktek budaya dan nilai-nilai spiritual masyarakat adat. Alam tidak kami pisah-pisahkan antara hutan dan non-hutan, tapi alam adalah ruang hidup di mana di dalamnya seluruh kehidupan spiritual, sosial, ekonomi, politik itu berlangsung. Sistem yang seperti inilah yang membuat masyarakat adat mampu menjaga alam di sekitarnya. Akan tetapi menjaga seperti yang terjadi saat ini itu tidak mudah. Tantangan sejauh ini justru lahir sumbernya dari invasi atas wilayah-wilayah adat oleh ekstraksi, oleh logging, oleh tambang, oleh sawit, dan bahkan saat ini ketika kita bicara tentang solusi untuk perubahan iklim yang kita hadapi, meskipun studi menyatakan bahwa masyarakat adat berkontribusi besar sekali untuk penyelamatan bumi dan seluruh umat manusia dari krisis iklim, akan tetapi saat ini bahkan bicara solusi pun tentang energi yang terbarukan pun itu justru mengancam masyarakat adat. Kita banyak yang bangga menggunakan kendaraan baterai, tetapi harus ingat bahwa itu juga berasal dari tambang-tambang yang menghancurkan hutan kita, menghancurkan alam kita, dan membunuh masyarakat adat. Jadi di setiap mobil dan motor baterai yang kita gunakan itu harus diingat bahwa ada setetes darah dan keringat dan air mata masyarakat adat di situ. Jadi sekarang ini kita perlu untuk mengingat dan memperingatkan diri kita masing-masing bahwa menjaga masyarakat adat itu adalah menjaga diri sendiri. Yang tadi saya sempat mendengar Bapak Peter tentang pendanaan, ini mungkin saya akan menyampaikan beberapa angka-angka yang akan membuat kita terkesima. Karena dari studi yang sudah dilakukan oleh Rainforest Foundation, juga oleh Ford Foundation, juga oleh Carapa, menunjukkan bahwa ternyata uang yang secara global digelontorkan untuk iklim, jadi climate funding, sesungguhnya hanya sekitar 1% yang diberikan kepada masyarakat adat dan komunitas lokal. Jadi ini indigenous peoples dan local communities itu adalah dua entitas yang berbeda. Dan angka juga menunjukkan bahwa uang-uang itu pun, laporan juga menunjukkan bahwa uang-uang itu pun ternyata jauh lebih kecil lagi yang memang langsung sampai di kampung-kampung. Uang ini yang tadi sudah kecil itu 1% saja, itu justru banyak sekali ya tertinggal, tertahan di organisasi-organisasi intermediary. Banyak habis untuk organisasi-organisasi internasional. Sedikit sekali yang sampai ke kampung-kampung. Yang ingin saya contohkan, yang paling nyata saat ini adalah salah satu lembaga donor milik pemerintah, saya tidak perlu menyebutkan namanya, yang menyebutkan dana untuk masyarakat adat dan komunitas lokal, ternyata satu-satunya yang mendapatkan uang organisasi masyarakat adat itu hanya Aman. Ini tentu saja kehormatan kepada kami, tapi di sisi lain juga banyak menimbulkan pertanyaan dari sesama masyarakat adat yang mengatakan bahwa jangan-jangan karena Aman sudah menerima, maka itu dijadikan alasan untuk tidak memberikan kepada yang lain-lain. Saya ingin menyampaikan adalah ada banyak sekali tantangan untuk bisa memastikan uang-uang ini sampai ke kampung-kampung. Kami, masyarakat adat, indigenous peoples, itu selalu disandra dengan istilah capacity. Kapasitas itu selalu digunakan sebagai alasan untuk tidak memberikan uang secara langsung kepada masyarakat adat. Padahal kita harus bisa memaknai kapasitas secara berbeda. Kapasitas masyarakat adat untuk menjaga hutan buat kita semua, menjaga ekosistem buat kita semua, menjaga alam yang baik buat kita semua, dan kemudian kapasitas dari donor untuk berkontribusi memberikan dukungannya. Ini yang harus kita pahami bersama-sama. Di organisasi seperti kami di Aman, kami sudah berumur 25 tahun ini, dan kami mencoba membuktikan bahwa masyarakat adat, organisasi masyarakat adat mampu memenuhi yang disebut sebagai due diligence dari donor. Aman itu bahkan tahun 2014 kami mendapat peringkat yang namanya outstanding dari World Bank. Jadi sebenarnya tidak ada alasan untuk terus-terus mengatakan bahwa kami tidak punya kapasitas. Saat ini Aman juga menjadi bagian dari Global Alliance dari masyarakat adat dan komunitas lokal Dan di bawah payungnya Global Alliance, biasanya disebut GATC, ada organisasi masyarakat adat di Latin Amerika, di Afrika, dan di Asia, dan di Mesoamerika. Di situ kami punya yang namanya Sandia sebagai platform untuk memperjuangkan dana pendanaan langsung kepada masyarakat adat. Saat ini di seluruh dunia, di Brasil ada Amazon, ada Podali, kemudian di saat ini juga organisasi masyarakat adat di Brasil namanya APB sedang mengembangkan pendanaan langsung untuk semua seluruh Brasil. Kemudian di Mesoamerika juga AMPB sudah membentuk pendanaan sendiri. Dan di Afrika saat ini sedang namanya Repaleak, organisasi masyarakat adat itu di Amerika Tengah, Central Afrika, dan mereka berada di 8 negara. Kemudian, waktunya sudah habis ya, 1 menit lagi kalau begitu. Kemudian di Asia juga kami sudah membentuk yang namanya IPAS, Indigenous Peoples Solidarity Fund in Asia, dan khususnya di Indonesia itu kita membentuk yang namanya Dana Nusantara. Dana Nusantara ini terbukti sangat efektif karena dengan uang kecil itu bisa diimplementasikan dengan cepat, dengan catatan keputusannya memang terorganisir di organisasi, yaitu 3 pemilik Dana Nusantara, pendiri Dana Nusantara, yaitu Aman, Walhi, dan KPA. Setahun usia Dana Nusantara, kami sudah meluncurkan 2 kali siklus pendanaan. Dan angkanya tidak besar, karena apa? Karena uangnya masih kecil sekali. Sehingga kami tidak mungkin menghabiskan seluruh uang yang ada sekarang. Inilah yang ingin saya sampaikan ke teman-teman yang ada di sini, untuk bisa melihat dan kita bekerja sama bagaimana memastikan dana-dana bisa langsung turun ke kampung. Uang-uang, saya biasanya menyebutnya uang celana, uang baju kaos, karena dia tidak sampai ke kaki, dia hanya tergantung dari leher sampai pinggang saja. Nah, saya pikir ini yang menjadi tanggung jawab kita bersama untuk mencari jawaban. Karena apa? Karena kalau kita tidak segera memastikan orang kampung menjaga hutan, maka ini akan menjadi kiamat bagi kita semua. Yang disebut sebagai reaching tipping point itu, kalau kita sampai ke situ, sebanyak apapun uang yang kita punya, itu tidak akan bisa menjawab persoalan kita. Nah, sehingga dengan demikian saya pikir ini yang harus menjadi diskusi yang diperluas untuk memastikan dukungan terhadap kampung-kampung terus-terus dilakukan. Nah, saya pikir demikian dari saya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Terima kasih sekali lagi.
Terima kasih Kak Ruka. Yang di-share ini sama powerfulnya dengan apa yang di-share Pak Peter tadi ya. Saya baru mendapatkan informasi bahwa jam 12.25 ternyata kita harus hard stop. Jadi kayaknya kita nggak punya waktu untuk berdiskusi sayangnya, padahal waktu berdiskusi itu yang kita tunggu-tunggu. Jadi kalau saya boleh, tadi saya berbisik pada pembicara untuk 5 menit. Kalau boleh di-korting, di-diskon menjadi 3 menit aja, paling penting tuh apa gitu kira-kira ya. Kalau memungkinkan belum sampai hard stop itu 25, kita masih ada waktu, kita diskusi 5 menit diskusi juga gak apa-apa lah, yang penting ngobrol. Karena kaya sekali apa yang dibagi hari ini. Oke, saya kasih kesempatan Pak Peter. Pak Peter pertanyaannya adalah, Pak James. Belajar dari pengalaman, apa saja cara yang dilakukan oleh lembaga-lembaga pendanaan global? Seperti Packard Foundation gitu ya, untuk meningkatkan fleksibilitas kerangka pendanaan dalam mendukung program-program di masyarakat adat seperti yang tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Ruka. Silakan Pak James.
So good morning everyone. I'm from the Packard Foundation, and just listening to Ruka's presentation, I hope that we are now in the process of trying to localize our support, and we're going through a transition whereby we will be able to get funds down to the frontline organizations and communities that do the actual work on the ground to protect the forest and the coastal resources. But to begin with, I just want to say, Packard Foundation is a proud partner of United in Diversity for the Bakal Pemimpin project. So David Packard was a big believer in individual leadership, and he felt that you need to find the leaders who have the potential to make major changes, give them training, give them resources, and set them free. They will go out and then make the changes that we want. So in Bakal Pemimpin, what we really like is we've got a tri-sector approach. We're bringing civil society, the government, and business together to try to resolve some of these complex, wicked problems that we have today to make the major changes that we need to see success and long-term sustainable change. Now, the Packard Foundation has gone through this process called decolonization of aid and capacity building, where we're trying to really understand how do we contextualize the support that we give in each of the countries where we work. In Indonesia, we've already worked with Universitas Indonesia to do a study into what is it that Indonesian stakeholders need from their civil society organizations. Now, what we're going to do is change our capacity building services from training our partners to report to us, because the upward accountability of donors is extremely heavy on local organizations. And how do we now change and contextualize our capacity building to help organizations report to their partners, to their beneficiaries, and achieve local compliance that's within the Indonesian legal framework so that they're more locally accountable rather than upward accountable. In order to do that, we're working with infrastructure organizations. So we're working with capacity builders. And we realize having capacity builders in Jakarta are not the only way to solve these problems. We're now looking at opening a capacity building partner in Papua so that there can be local capacity building using the local context, the local language, with local people as the trainers, rather than this fly-in, fly-out service that comes from Jakarta. So how do we develop a deep partnership with a local organization in Papua, give them multi-year general operating support funds so that they can adapt their programs to the needs that change regularly within the local context. Additionally, we're trying to work with re-granting organizations, and we've just started a forum called the Equitable and Ethical Re-Granters. We are aware that often we give funds, which is very, very flexible, called general operating support, and then for some reason, re-granters put a lot more conditions on the sub-grants or the re-granting that they give to local partners. And we want to really understand that challenge and try to find a solution for that so that the money that gets to local partners is as easy and as flexible to manage as the funds that we give to our re-granters. And then one of the other things that we're trying to do is establish what's called a fiscal sponsor. These are the organizations that manage all the administration and finances of grants for local communities that don't have a legal entity, but are still doing amazing work on the ground. So as these fiscal sponsors take all the administrative burden of the local activists and local organizations, they can do what they're best at, which is working with communities. It's the sustainable management of coastal resources, forest resources, and really try to represent the local people as best they can without all the conditions that an international donor puts upon many of the NGOs. So these are the things that we're trying to put in place at the moment. We're very aware, 1% to 3% of all funds get to local organizations. We're hoping that changes. Even within the last 5 years, from a majority of our funds going to international organizations, about 90% is going to local organizations in Indonesia. So the palm oil initiative, the agriculture, livelihoods and conservation, the civil society and leadership, all our funds now go to local organizations. The ocean program is shifting the same way. And with about 10% of the funds going to international organizations, we're trying to understand what's that new role that international organizations play to be a facilitator, a backstopper for these networks of local organizations so that they can get help to discuss what they need to at the national and international level. So we're trying to develop a way that funds get to local organizations in the most easy, manageable way as possible. And we're working with infrastructure to try to solve those issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I love you mentioned decolonization of AIDS, because it's the same with Shift the Power, similar, and also with localization. It's something that it's a global movement, and we are all needs to race there is no the end, of course, but race as far as possible so that we can achieve what you just mentioned, locally led development. Oke, Pak Father. we call it Romo di sini. Romo Mansini. Silahkan. This is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation and for this special moment for me to share and learn from you, from your experiences. I was asked to share some input from my work, and simply I'm missionary priest. I was working and had this grace to work in Latin America, in Chile, Argentina, and Peru. So I learned so much, and I was in touch so much with the indigenous people connected around the Pachamama, the concept of the Mother Earth, of course. I had also the pleasure to work with the Mapuche community in south of Chile. They are really very connected to the grassroots, very conservative also in the protection. But at the time that I was there, they were fighting really. That was as a war, as against some companies that started to extend the exploration in the mining, and also part of the lithium company that was present there. So at the same time, I was born in a small village in North Poland, where I'm from very Catholic family, and Poland is extremely Catholic country, where even our calendar of the agriculture is connected to the what is the spirituality or the culture that's expressed. So for example, today we are living the fest of the Pentecost, but we call it as the green festivity, because it's connected also to the harvesting time, is the planting for the harvesting. So, but what I would like to share with you, I'm representing Vatican City, is the smallest country in the world, so we reach already the neutrality, so but it's so easy. But I would like to share first that, of course, we have to acknowledge local wisdom, and absolutely what was made by Pope Francis, it was to convocate the first ever synodus about Amazonia, because I was working also in Amazonia. So we worked for 3 years in the Vatican City to give the centrality to the people, indigenous people from Amazonia. And actually, for the first time ever, the indigenous people was present in the different commissions, department, organization of the Vatican. And the Pope Francis really patted the center, the indigenous people, and invited all the stakeholders from the civil organizations, United Nations, from the church, to really listen the cry of the earth, listen the cry of the poor, how said, and especially also to learn from the indigenous community. The second, of course, is to empower and respect and empower the local communities. From my experience working just on the ground, I always try to help it, especially to the young people, to the youth, to reconnect to the grassroots, to reconnect to the identity, to be proud of their local wisdom, and also to be creative how to share this local wisdom with others. And for example, just close to here, just to closing this, in Lombok, there we have a very nice experience working with the Muslim communities, with the entire community. There is the small village where they have a awik awik. Awik awik is the Sasak tradition, is the respect of the land, respect of the forest, respect is the rules, absolutely. And I was participating a few days ago in one ceremony where they was catch one person that was fishing illegally, so using some illegal methods. And these people, for the punishment, had to release 20 times more fishes that were killed. At the same time, as they say the rules, if you had cut the tree, so you have to plant the 10 trees more. So it's this kind of the local wisdom, like from Mapuche, like from here, close 1 hour by boat, to Lombok City, Awik Awik, is really the best than all the SDGs that we have, is the best academy, best PhDs, and only we have to find the way to give them the floor, to give the real visibility, to not treat us as the t-shirt money that somebody said before us, but really give the dignity and give the central role and on our conversation. So thank you so much. I know the time up, so that
Thank you. Thank you, Father Marcin. Romo Marcin bercerita tentang awik-awik, ini menarik ya, bahwa ternyata kita kalau percaya tidak harus hukum itu kan hukum yang positif ya. Jadi hukum-hukum adat pun akan sangat efektif untuk membantu preserve bumi ini. Last but not least, dan kita tidak punya waktu untuk diskusi, mohon maaf sekali, kita hanya bisa menghabiskan mendengarkan cerita dari para resource. Kak Steve, Pak Steve, boleh berbagi? Ini nggak begitu bagus, Bolehkah berbagi kisah-kisah di Raja Ampat ya? Dan kalau tadi mendengar dari pembicaraan yang sebelumnya, tantangan-tantangan apa sih di level lokal yang dihadapi untuk upaya restorasi ekosistem? Sorry, we still have one more. Ya, oke. Silahkan Pak, 3 menit idealnya, kalau terpaksa 5 menit. Yang di luar disuruh masuk aja nggak apa-apa, biar dengar cerita dari Papua. Oke, silahkan.
Oke, baik, terima kasih. Perkenalkan, saya Steve dari komunitas kawan pesisir. Ini adalah sebenarnya sebuah komunitas yang lahir dari masyarakat adat di Raja Ampat. Seperti itu. Yang pertama bahwa masyarakat adat itu memiliki spirit. Ada sebuah filosofi yang terbangun di situ, yang kemudian itu menjadi darah daging, dan itulah yang kemudian masyarakat adat itu bisa dapat bertahan hidup di atas sumber daya alam mereka. Kalau di kami komunitas adat Wawiyai, salah satu filosofi dari leluhur kami adalah makan bukan untuk hari ini saja tapi masih ada anak cucu. Itulah yang kemudian mengakar bagi kami, dan akhirnya lahirlah sebuah gerakan komunitas di tengah-tengah masyarakat adat kami, khususnya dalam melakukan restorasi ekosistem mangrove di Raja Ampat. Pada saat kami mencoba untuk melakukan pemetaan, bahwa sebenarnya yang paling terpenting adalah memperkuat kelompok perempuan. Karena perempuan itu adalah sebagai sumber kehidupan dalam menjaga sumber daya alam. Seperti salah satu tantangan kendala yang kami hadapi adalah ketika Raja Ampat hari ini menjadi sentral pariwisata di dunia, menjadi perhatian dunia untuk pariwisata, tapi disitulah masyarakat adat sendiri masih rapuh. Itu belum tersentuh dengan segala sumber pembiayaan yang ada. Kami mencoba untuk bagaimana kerja-kerja di lapangan dalam melakukan restorasi ekosistem, bahwa kami mencoba untuk bagaimana adanya program-program inovasi yang dapat bisa membuat sebuah keberlanjutan di situ dengan melakukan kegiatan penanaman. Jadi ketika ada wisatawan yang datang, kami menjual bibit, lalu kami mencoba membuat produk mangrove untuk bisa bagaimana produk-produk ini dapat menghidupkan ekonomi rumah tangga bagi kelompok perempuan. Seperti itu. Jadi seperti apa yang tadi disampaikan oleh Ibu Sekjen Aman itu sangat benar sekali, dan kemudian juga disampaikan oleh Pak Peter bahwa memang betul untuk bagaimana ke depannya dengan adanya dana atau grant yang diberikan kepada masyarakat, tetapi bagaimana setidaknya grant itu dapat memperkuat kapasitas masyarakat adat di tingkat tapak, karena mereka adalah sebagai jantung kehidupan masa depan bumi. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih sudah berbagi. Sebelum saya tutup, saya mau mengundang nih satu aja setiap meja. Tolong berbagi di sini satu kata ya, apa yang dirasakan teman-teman setelah mendengar paparan-paparan walaupun belum sempat diskusi ya. Satu kata saja, silakan. Saya main tunjuk aja ya. Paling dekat.
I guess it's empowering. Empowering.
Empowering, oke, empowering. Dari sini satu kata, silakan. Silakan. Satu kata.
Keren.
Keren. Waduh. Keren. Oke, dari sini satu kata. Perempuannya belum dapat nih, yang perempuan Oke.
Hadir.
Hadir. Kalau bahasa UID-nya ini presence. Oke.
Support. Support.
Oke, support. Satu lagi di sini.
High opening.
High opening. Oke. Silakan. Di sini siapa yang from?
Kalau dari kami, it's challenging.
Challenging. Oke. Very nice. Satu lagi.
Kalau dari saya bahasa Banjar namanya kayuh baimbay. Kayuh baimbay means we row it together. We do it together. Kayuh baimbay.
Oke. Pas banget nih untuk menutup. Jadi terima kasih para peserta diskusi ini. Kami sangat mohon maaf karena tidak bisa berdiskusi bersama walaupun hanya 15 menit sebetulnya ya. Dan juga seluruh pembicara atas kontribusinya berbagi pengetahuan dan pengalaman. Kita semua ingin mewujudkan we row it together sampai ke depan di mana kearifan lokal menjadi garis depan dalam upaya global menciptakan dunia yang berkelanjutan dan berkeadilan. Better business, better world. Terima kasih.